Excellent. So I'm going to call to order this March 21st regular Board of Ed meeting. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Good evening, everyone. We have our
Good evening. It's really nice to come here when it's not in the middle of the night, so I can appreciate that. All right, so we'll just start with student life. We have our tickets for the SHS Spring Musical production that are on sale now. The show's going to be this Friday through Sunday. Friday's going to be at 7 p.m., Saturday's at 7 p.m., and Sunday is at 2 p.m. Tickets are online, and if you don't already know, if you haven't seen the advertising, it's The Wedding Singer. It's going to be really good. We had our WISA fair hosted here at the high school this past weekend with nearly 600 students from 40 districts attending. From Somers receiving awards for their accomplishments. Congrats to them. Mock Trial moved forward in their competition and are competing at this very moment in the White Plains Courthouse. Academic Challenge made it to nationals, and they'll be heading up to Chicago in June. To raise money for their trip, the club has started a cutest pet competition among the staff across all 4 buildings, with the top 3 in our high school going to Darwin the cat, Amelia Eggheart the chicken, and Vader the dog. We had students from the Representative Inspiring Social Equity Club, or RISE, participate in this year's Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center's Human Rights Institute for high school student leaders. 2 of our upperclassmen, Andrew Acosta and Ali Camardella, presented at the Institute on women's rights in Iran. And we also have the Festival of Arts, which will be held on April 27th from 7 to 9 p.m. at Somers High School. All right, moving on to athletics. Our winter seasons finally come to a close, or not finally, sorry. Winter seasons comes to a close with the spring season soon underway. And we've also had our New York State Football Championship Parade on the 11th. And I just want to give a congrats to a few people. Congrats to our student athletes who signed letters of intent to play in their sport in college. We have Michael Keene going to Post University for lacrosse, Luke Savino at the University of West Virginia for football, and Kaylee Pico at Fairfield University for track and field. And another congrats to head coach Chris DeCinto, yes, and our boys basketball team, who have been selected by the Westchester and Putnam County Officials Association as the winners of the 22nd Annual Sportsmanship Award, which recognizes hard work, fair play, cohesiveness, team spirit, and sportsmanship. All right, moving on to counseling. This week, students are completing the Spring Co-Vitality Social Emotional Wellness Survey. Results will be posted to the campus shortly after spring break. Student course selection for next year wraps up this week. Students and parents should look for verifications to come home before the break. Reviewing this information is extremely important, so please keep an eye out for the posting notice. Following spring break, counselors will begin 10th grade career lessons and then move on to the senior survey the week after. And lastly, best of luck to all our seniors awaiting final college admissions decisions, which should be coming out over the next 2 weeks. Moving on to our final area of the night, student council. Within the exec board, we recently returned from our NYSCLSA conference, and although it was cut short, once again due to snow, we managed to learn a ton from various keynote speakers, workshops, and other really good activities. We have our senior citizens brunch on March 26th, and Battle of the Bands is going to be on April 21st. And with the class boards, we have senior events. We had our senior ice skating trip, which is pretty fun. And we have Six Flags tickets on sale now. I believe they're $105. Unless you paid PTA dues, then they're $85. And we have, within the junior class, they have their own junior prom coming out on Saturday, April 22nd from 6:30 to 10:30. Catering from Amore, a photo booth, and DJ entertainment will be there. And students from other grades and other schools are allowed to attend with a permission slip. Tickets will be going on sale tomorrow. And that's going to be all from me. Thank you.
Nice.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Wow.
So many exciting things.
Getting the mobile version.
We are now at the public comment. part of the meeting. So before we begin, I just want to say that public comment should be limited to the items that are on our agenda this evening, which includes the central office report of the proposed budget. We have some reports from committee liaisons and some board action. I'd like to ask that anybody from the community that has something that they would like to comment upon to the school board, please go ahead to the podium, state your name, and we're going to try to keep folks to 3 minutes, please.
Paul Treverdini. Try to do this officially this time.
Appreciate it.
I looked over the budget on the agenda fairly quickly, and there were some requests that I'd make tonight. I don't know, it's probably way too early for you guys to answer some of these questions as the presentation gets delivered, but figured best efforts, if there was some context that you could deliver on some of these questions, it would be helpful. There seems to be lots of costs when you look at like 22 and 23 that are bucketed into broader categories. And given the size of this budget, moving above, 9 figures by 5%, it's not that it wasn't in meaningful territory before, but it's certainly optics. It's a big number. And I would personally find it helpful to have a more granular understanding of some of the salaries and expenditures, so we could start to look at things a little bit more closely. Again, looking back at that 22-23 budget, there were the following categories that accounted for over $3.6 million worth of funding. In those buckets were guidance services, health services, psychological services, social workers. When we find out what the 2023-2024 proposal will be, it would be great to see those costs as well broken down, potentially with some more understanding of how many people support those positions. It's my understanding that there are 24 mental health professionals. In addition to all of the mental health overhead, understanding the overall costs as it relates to the DEI work, specifically salaries, stipends, and anything that goes into that work that our coordinator is doing would be helpful. I know that a lot of those stipends and whatnot are already laid out explicitly. Also, are there other positions that we are currently paying full-time employment salaries for that we can otherwise be using a consultant or volunteer board? I'm not sure if we would be able to call that out, but it might be helpful to understand that a little bit better in some context. It would also be great to understand the cost per pupil breakdown for the district in more detail. Even better would be to have an apples-to-apples comparison of Somers to other local districts in similar size. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Alana Sofko. I've got 2 kids in the high school who've been through since kindergarten. I also have comments about the budget, only because I've been hearing some things and maybe some concern from the community about any new policies or changes or shifts in policy process governance impacting resources allocated to kids with IEPs, special ed kids generally. And so with that in mind, I took a look in great detail on the materials that the board has shared over the last few months that's posted publicly for everyone to see. I did some math on the numbers publicly presented. I don't know what you're going to say about the budget later. I'm hoping maybe you'll be able to cover some of these points, either now or in the future, so that we could all hear about it. But I figured I would just sort of go down and list for you what my observations were and things that I would hope that we'd get a bit more transparency, clarity on. So again, reviewing publicly reported information from the board meeting this school year, looking to confirm a few things. And so please let me know if I've gotten anything wrong. But mostly this information came from materials you've provided. So the math is it's math. No matter how many times you do it, it's the same. So from my calculations, about 14% of the students in the district are special ed, but 19% of the salary budget is devoted to that population. On a year-over-year basis from last year's budget to the proposed budget for this next year, the special education staff salaries increased by 5%, which is a bigger increase than a general education salary budget increase of 4% and the sort of the non-teaching salaries at 2%. It's unclear whether the salary of a DEI coordinator would impact any of those percentages, but based on sort of state averages, it seems like that would represent something like 0.3%, again, making some assumptions on that comp. I would say that though we have not been presented any information indicating whether or not our DEI coordinator has an operating budget that's material to the overall budget or takes from other budgets, that would be interesting to know. Next point is, without doing that dangerous thing of mixing OPEX and CAPEX, operating expenses versus capital expenditures, this comparison is really just for size, and I just want to make sure I have this right. The funds considered for the sports facility upgrades, right, the CAPEX, at the max range of about $7 million, compared to the salary budgets of the special ed educators, for example, is roughly 70% of the size of the salary budget for special ed, and about 14% compared to the overall salary budget. So it's a lot of money going into sports. Again, I understand it's not OPEX. I get that too. When I looked at the salary budget by the number of students each group services, we now know that general ed students receive or get the benefit of roughly $11,600 per student per year this school year, which will increase to about $12,500 next year on next year's budget from general ed educators. This is, I think, a partial response to the prior speaker. It does not account for buildings, grounds, or materials or any of the other things in your budget. This is just on salary. Now, the same budget for special ed students, or the same math on special ed students, when you do that same math, you get $24,800 per student per year for the current year, and $26,900 per year per student from special ed educators for each of the special ed students. So effectively, the district is currently spending 47% more on salaries per student for special ed students.
If you could wrap up, we're at 3 minutes.
Sorry, did I?
We're at 3 minutes, so if you
Okay.
can just finish your thoughts.
Okay, and plans to continue. So given these stats, is there reason to believe that despite the increase in financial resources planned for students with IEPs for the next school year, that they will receive fewer services and supports than the current year and last year?
Thank you.
That's it.
If you'd like to give your comments to the clerk, we can make sure that they're shared with the board and that we are able to read them all and make sure that the correct people are responding.
Sure, and I'd write my name down, but the pen's gone.
Thank you so much.
Is it your
Tommy?
Okay.
All right, so it looks like we don't have any other members of the community making a comment to the board. Dr. Blanche, it's central office report on the budget.
Yep, I'll go ahead, and Chris is starting to connect up there, so we'll look at the budget piece. So we'll try to certainly address a few of those questions. I would encourage both of our community members to please either reach out to my office directly or to Chris's office directly so we can have more of a conversation, frankly, than a kind of a board table listen and things like that. So certainly one of the pieces is that, as we know, we've started this project back in October, is when we start the process. We've had reports on January and February and March, and so some of the detail that you're seeing here, again, will be a part when we look at our April 18th kind of budget adoption from the board piece that we have there, and then we'll be able to start looking at the breakout of that detail as some of our community members spoke here today, looking at last year's budget, kind of public budget document that's there, which is a good 2.5 weeks there before the community does vote on the budget in May. So we'll have hopefully a good strong number of weeks to look at all the information there is broken out. The narrative is a good place to look at that budget document that breaks out some of the details of the programs that are being supported, some of the number of personnel that are in those areas that are being supported and things like that. So that's broken out in that regard. So we'll be able to see a lot of that information in there as we move forward. The different areas that we spoke about here as far as like mental health numbers and stuff like that, that information will be available in there, but certainly can call my office or Chris's office, and we can certainly get those numbers that are detailed in that area. And then as far as percentage breakdowns and things like that, different areas and different pieces, that's going to need to be done through a conversation. So we're looking at the information in the same way. So my quick piece is I don't see those calculations drawing into exactly what we would see as parallel. So, but that's a follow-up conversation we'd certainly make with anybody that had those comments. So for this evening, again, this is our next step in our journey. So we did our non-operational, our operational piece, and then we've done our instructional piece of the house. Now we're bringing those together and looking at that regard to kind of at the highest level. So Chris and I will go ahead and go back and forth, and I'll go ahead and have you start us off. So thanks, Chris.
Sure. So tonight, again, we'll just recap the entire budget development process, then put together an actual 23-24 proposed budget number as of today. Then we have a chart showing the largest expenditures and revenues for the year, for next year's budget. We have a chart on the tax levy and tax rate analysis, bringing back the maximum tax levy limit history for the past 5 years. Then we show the state aid projection for next year, and then as well as the contingency budget. And then we'll wrap up with the capital reserve fund proposition. That'll be in May as well. So as Dr. Blanche just mentioned, we've had these ongoing budget discussions dating back to the beginning of this current school year. We started presenting to the board and the community back in December, and we've had budget presentations every month since then. This is kind of that summary presentation, and then in April, it'd be the board adopting the budget at that time for which the voters will be voting on in May. And again, just to show for the annual budget, it's a balancing act. The revenues and expenses must match. Again, some of our largest revenues are property taxes, state aid, sales tax, and then some of our larger expenses in the budget include salary and benefits, transportation, debt service, and utilities. So this slide now is showing the proposed budget for 23-24, which, as you can see at the top line, is $106,228,824, which is just over a $5.2 million increase, or an annual change from last year, about 5.2%. The line under that is the use of reserves and our debt service transfer. You see a reduction of about 26%, or just under $200,000 from the current year. Payment in lieu of taxes are for agreements that we have with places that make a payment in lieu of paying school taxes. Again, that's pretty flat from the previous year. Revenue non-property taxes, you'll see, went up about $3 million, or almost 20%. The large bulk of that increase was from the state aid increase that we saw this year. Then the last two are related to the tax levy and the estimated tax rate. You'll see for the tax levy, it's a 2.8% increase, or just over $2.3 million from the previous year. Again, the maximum levy that we could do with a simple majority vote is about 3.59%, because there's other things that go into that calculation of the tax cap that can bump us up over that 2%, which everyone kind of refers to as a 2% tax cap. There's other exclusions for debt service, and then for building aid that comes off of that. So that's why the maximum levy, that calculation is just under 3.6%. With that information, based on the tax levy proposed here, the estimated tax rate increase would be about 1.97%. That is as a result of other assessments coming in during the town that have increased the total assessed values for the town. So that kind of share of the tax levy pie gets distributed amongst everybody. So more things came online, values increased, so estimated tax rate is just under that 2%. Again, if we went to the maximum tax levy for the simple majority of that 3.59%, the maximum tax rate would then be looking at about a 2.72% increase.
Can you go back really quick?
Yes, I can.
The revenues that we're getting from the state, how is that determined? So it's a significant increase. You know, how do they determine what?
So
we
I do
get?
have a slide couple
Yeah,
down the road about state aid, so I'll get into some of that if that's all right.
Okay.
Yep. So, as I mentioned in the beginning of the budget presentation here tonight, that it's a balancing act where the revenues have to match expenses. So this chart, this graph is just kind of showing the larger expenses and revenues and how, if you look at the top left, you start at zero, you start adding in some of these additional expenditure costs for your energy performance contract payment, your utilities, special ed, transportation. These are all costs adding to the budget. You get down to the salary, you see, and then FTE reduction, so that's a salary savings. So the net increase in salary costs, you're looking at about 1.7 million. And then the other big number for expenditure increases are those health insurance that we've talked about in a few different presentations here this year, where the health insurance numbers went up dramatically compared to last year. So then those are all your increases or all your impacts to the expenditure side of the budget. And then to the right side of the line, you have your impact to the revenue side of the budget. So again, some of the bigger ones, Westchester sales tax, we're seeing that number still go higher. The CPI, that's from the tax levy increase. State aid and building aid, again, we'll get into a little more detail as to how that number kind of comes about, but you see the big $2.4 million, rough estimate increase for state aid. And then our ERS reserve, so that's a reduction in revenue because we're looking at using less reserves to help balance the budget. End result, you add in all your expenditures, you add in all your different revenue, and they all, in the end, has to match. And that's kind of what this chart was looking to show, just how big the impact of some of these bigger buckets are on the budget. Any questions there?
I want to say thank you for this slide because I do believe that IFE has asked for something very similar to this for the past several years. So I'm happy that, did you have any questions, IFE? I know that this speaks directly to your starting at zero and looking at where our needs are.
Yeah, I think on the left side, the red part of the bar, this tracking expenses bar, probably could relate back to your budget line items in a more detailed correlation. That would be helpful. For example, the questions people ask about sports, special ed, and so on, different items. Because this is a little more gross figure, but if you can correlate to line items in the budget that, we have all these items that generally all increase, unfortunately. The ideal situation would be you have some items you will increase, some items maybe you can decrease, so that the budget would not be always have to be increased. But reality is difficult to do that. But still, correlation would be useful.
And so if I would say, just for example, conversational before with the salary and the health insurance, that makes up approximately 2/3 of the overall net increase. So those are the big buckets we're trying to look at. You throw in the EPC and the utilities, some of the other increase in cost. Now you're getting up to over 90% of the overall increase of the budget. So that was the hope here, is to say, look, these are the big pieces that are having the over increase. Those two in particular, just this year, were the health insurance in and of itself, and then the cost of
We do
utilities.
understand the part that the big, buckets are
Sure.
sometimes we can't do much about it, but still, I guess as a board, our responsibility is do whatever we can, how little we can, to control the budget and make the sort of expense more relevant to what the community needs, what the community perceives is important. That picture can be, brought up, clearer if we can correlate to those key items, line items, very specifically. Forget about those insurance, healthcare, and so on, that maybe we couldn't control. It's out of our hands, so to speak. But focus on the ones that are really relevant to our parents, the concern, to the education. Okay, whether it's math, or it's whatever program. Sometimes it could be very detailed, small, not really affecting the 9-digit budget, but we will feel better. I think the community will feel better we are doing the right thing, to spend the money in the right way.
Yeah, it sounds like you're asking for more of like a one-to-one correspondence to the things that we need, right?
yeah.
Like reading or math or whatever those supports are,
Right
specifically.
at the meat
Yeah,
level.
yeah,
So
that's-
here's the steak, even though it's a small slice.
Thank you.
So hopefully, again, with the budget summary document, you will see that and more of that level of detail. Again, we're in a process. It's not in a moment in time, so this is where we're at in the process. So hope here is a high level, and as we get that item level, detail level, building level, content area, you'll have that in the budget to budget detail. So thanks for that.
What is EPC?
Energy performance contract.
Oh, okay.
So that again allowed us to put in new equipment. I'm glad you actually pulled that out, because without doing that, our cost for utilities would have even jumped more out through the roof. We're running a much more efficient boiler system. Our lights are all LEDs, so we're saving a fair amount on the usage per kilowatt hour and things like that. It's just that the cost per unit's gone up a lot more.
Yep,
So
got it.
without that change, it would have been even
Lot more.
more challenging.
Thank you for calling out the acronym. Also, FTE for people that aren't familiar with it, right? You want to explain what that is? If anybody watching is looking at the acronyms here and curious about.
Fun time every day.
Correct, correct.
Yeah,
what
full-time
we're doing.
equivalent, that's like just a full position. So that's what it
So being
references to.
responsive to the lowering enrollment, there is a decrease in.
Right. And so we have roughly $500,000 worth of salary and related cost decrease in there, because we're seeing some of the decrease at the upper levels. And that's frankly a piece we've been on over the last number of years, as it's worked its way from Primrose to SAS to the middle school, now to the high school. And so that piece has been a reduction in overall staffing.
And you've been able to handle that through attrition, right? Just
We
so
have,
everyone knows.
and that's been, our faculty has been very, very flexible, because sometimes it causes one individual maybe to go into one grade level to another, or kind of split roles, and so it's been very helpful that our collective team has been there to help us handle that through attrition, and that means everybody's been having to be flexible, certainly within years and across years, so.
Thank you.
And the special ed tuition, BOCES, that's kind of external tuition that we have to send out for students, right?
Right, so we actually just, for example, we had some updates on some pricing from out of district, not related to the district, that maybe that's been a $40,000 kind of price item, it's jumped up to $60,000. So that's just there, and what we have no determination over that is the price that we were charged back, and that's where it would come back from. So, and so those would be areas that are a good example of. And certainly we are also seeing that, again, a little question about our special education program. My opinion is, I think what we do here for all of our children, all of our kids, is something to be proud of. And that certainly, I would say, include our special education program as well as any of our other programs. That area, we are seeing that some of our students are coming with some higher impact needs. So with higher impact needs, you're going to often need some more resources to provide those children with needs. They may have occupational therapy needs, physical therapy needs, they may have speech needs, they may have general education needs. So, but they're in general having some more impact needs. So that's going to take a little bit more of a lift there. It has not, though, and we'll continue to share it forward in these coming budget meetings, is that has not impacted any of their programs. As the board knows, we just were re-identified as a mid-years program here. High school is accredited as a DP program in the high school. We offer the highest number of advanced coursework that we're aware of that are in the PNW area right now. And so courses are there. We're bringing on different extracurricular activities for the children. Elementary now is looking at Spanish and world language in 3rd and 4th grade this year. Next year, we're looking to go to 5th grade. So every year, we're looking to go ahead and have it be the best experience for all kids. And so the reality is that, and actually even when we talked about the mental health a little bit before, our community member spoke there, I believe the numbers are 22. I think he had said 24, but that's where we get that clarified through a phone call. That through our COVID relief dollars last year, we did bring on a social worker to assist with that work. And we're seeing, we have a community committee, a social emotional wellness advisory committee that we've gone through last year and this year, and we see the ever-present needs and increasing needs there. So the budget again aligns for support for that work. So it's a pretty sophisticated operation we're running. And so from little 4 or 5 year old kids to kids who are 21 years old, we still have some children because of their needs. They may be here till 21. And also you'll see in the budget, we'll speak about a little bit more next time, but we are going from 2 universal pre-K classrooms to 4 preschool classrooms, so we're doubling our amount next year. those are 100% coming from state funded directly for that purpose only. We can't do anything else with it. We can only use that for the pre-K program. So we're able to do that. And so we've got a good partnership with our YMCA, and so that allows us to do that. So those are all added values. And that honestly lets us, if we had an open classroom here or there, lets us make sure we're using our buildings fully, that the community has afforded to us and stuff, so.
And then the last question on the salary piece of it. The $2.2 million, that's 100% just pre-negotiated contract, normal raises year over year, right?
Right, and it will include also, as we all know, the ceilings will go up each year for the amount of, that has to go in for Social Security and FICA and things, so that includes all those increases as well and stuff like that too. So that's an increase there. And again,
So there's no new net head count or positions or anything like that in that?
no,
column?
we have our SSRP and our support staff and our teaching staff and administrative staff, and so those are the pieces that we're walking through. As the board may recall, one of the things we spoke about earlier, we had, again, another reduction at the high school. What we had done is to kind of continue with our commitment for students reading. We are taking an FTE and putting it in place at this campus here to support students with the Orton Gillingham reading component. So the ability for us, so there wasn't a net gain, it just, when we took that loss, we were able to reshift some FTE around. So that's again an example of shifting FTE always, and then trying to have a net drop there, as we'll have that more likely 2 more years, and then we're pretty much going to be holding because we'll have reached our floor as far as our population goes. And we don't see any peaks coming up soon or anything like that, so that should be our floor for a while, but we won't generate an item like that has a positive impact on our expenditures from the staffing, because we've been kind of gone through all those.
So just for the folks who are not familiar with the process as much as the board may be, those shifts to FTE, the fun time people, are something that we see on a regular basis in every meeting in the personnel consent agenda.
Sure.
And that's where I'm just trying to share so that anybody who's paying attention and interested in maybe being part of this would know that that's where you might look to on the agenda to say, this is where people are being moved around. This is where you can see that people have been reallocated to support the reading needs that we have in the middle school from the high school.
Right, yep, exactly.
And then I know we talked about it in the last meeting though, but just for reclarification since it's here, the $1.6 million in the health insurance, that is state mandated increases that they do to fund their health insurance for whatever increases or kind of deficits that they might have in their overall pool, correct?
So there's 2 health insurance plans. So there's the Empire plan, which one unit is in with our teachers are in that plan. And so that is basically run at a state level, and those increases there happen. We really don't have any piece over that. By contract, then, is what percentage is paid by the employer and the employee in the contract. The same for our other units, administrators, as well as support staff. That is the local P&W local consortium for insurance. So those pieces are there. The collective boards decide what they're going to go up, and then our collective bargaining agreements determine what that's going to be, who owns what portion year by year for the next number of years.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yep.
Thank you.
All right, just shifting to the tax levy and tax rate analysis. You see again for 23-24, we're looking at a tax levy increase of about 2.8% and a tax rate increase of 1.97%. And if you look down at the very bottom, that's where the impact on someone living in the community, their 23-24 school taxes. For a home assessed at $70,000, we're looking at a monthly increase of approximately $20. For a condo that's assessed at $23,000, you're looking at a monthly increase just shy of $7. Again, this is based off the estimated tax rate. Tax rate isn't set until the summer, because we have to get the final assessments from the town, and then once that's done, then the tax bills get printed and sent out. But based on our current tax levy and the current assessments numbers that we receive from the town, that's where we're coming up with the estimated tax rate of 1.97, which you could see is kind of in line with the last few years. This current year, 22-23, you see a 2.66% tax rate increase. That was largely due to the settlement of the former Pepsi property. Which then reduced the amount that property pays in school taxes, and then that just gets redistributed amongst the rest of the community. So that's why you see a little larger increase in the tax rate for the current school year.
So settling that on behalf of the town now spreads the burden to the rest of the community members in the town.
Correct.
Thank you.
So this slide we actually had in the last presentation. We just updated some numbers as we continued to work to finalize where we thought the tax levy should be. So this again is showing the last 5 years for the maximum tax levy limit. So for 2019-2020 school year, the maximum levy was just under 80 million, and that's what we went out to levy. You see in the 2021 school year, we levied just about $400,000 less than the maximum levy. 21-22, we went to the maximum tax levy. This current school year, we were almost about $1.6 million under the maximum tax levy. And again, when I say maximum tax levy, I'm talking about the maximum tax levy that requires a simple majority. You can always go above the limit if you want, then that requires a supermajority vote. Not something that we've ever looked to do here. Some districts have, we just have never entertained that. So then the update to this slide from the last time was for 23-24. So now we're looking at about $660,000 less than the maximum tax levy limit. So over the course of the past 5 years, it's about $2.6 million that we did not levy to the community when we could have went to that limit, again, requiring a simple majority. We always look at it, if we don't need to, we're not going to just raise taxes for no reason. Some of these, like this current year, a large reason why we could stay under the cap by almost $1.6 million was due to the large increase in state aid that we got.
Yeah. Which we had not been receiving as regularly in the past, prior to COVID.
Correct. So if you don't mind, I'll jump right into this state aid slide.
Oh, look at that.
So I'll just, a couple of these. The foundation aid you'll see is the largest increase. It's the largest part of our aid, and it's seeing about a $2.5 million increase. So as you were alluding to, so last year, the last 2 years, we've seen a significant increase in state aid. And this year is going to be that kind of final year where the state was making districts whole for the foundation aid that they were not receiving for the past, say,
Many years.
10, 15 years. There was a gap elimination adjustment, they would call it, where if you were supposed to receive, $6 million in foundation aid, you were only going to receive $4 million. That went on for many years, and now over the past 3 years, the state is committed to making districts fully funded for foundation aid. So that is a large contributing factor to that increase in foundation aid. It's a pretty complex formula that includes your, district's wealth ratio, free and reduced lunch count, CPI, the Consumer Price Index, actually gets calculated into that. That was actually one of the driving factors for it going up more than districts typically see, in addition to that foundation aid increase that we've received the last couple of years. So there were many districts that were surprised to see the large increase in foundation aid that they were getting this year when these first came out back in January.
So if I understand correctly too, so the foundation aid, that's something that was set on a formula that's been set for
Many years, yes.
almost 20 years, I think it is now that it goes back. And so that's not something that changes. I mean, the amount they give us might change, but the formula is the same.
Formula is
and
the same, yes.
Based on that, we get that certain amount that
Right.
they call it foundation because that's basically the aid that we get kind of no matter what.
No matter what, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to,
It's not allocated for something in particular. It's
No.
just from the state.
Correct.
but to follow that line of inquiry, so if now we have been made whole by the state, does that mean that we can anticipate receiving approximately this much foundation aid moving forward? Or is there any indication that it would roll back to where it was 5 years ago where we were not being funded to this?
I'll say today, there's no indication that this foundation aid would be rolling back at all. Moving forward, this should be our base,
Nice.
and then there's a percentage increase typically each year that a district would see a minimum increase, and then if there's other factors that go into, there's some interesting factors. If somebody hits the Powerball, that could have an impact on your foundation aid. So all these little
That decreases it or increases it. Yeah.
So there's things like that go into it, but for the most part, this should be kind of our base kind of moving
Okay.
forward. So with that increase in foundation aid, again, as Dr. Blanche mentioned earlier, having like world language now down, we had 3rd and 4th grade this year, having it in 5th grade next year. It allows us to kind of still maintain our social emotional wellness team that we have, maintain current class sizes. Because if we don't have this increase, then it's a couple $1 million that we'd have to be looking at reducing in the budget. Then just some of these other aid categories, transportation and building aid, they're both, transportation is expense-based, so we file our state aid forms by September of the following year after the year ended, and that's what our aid is based on. So 23-24 aid is based on 22-23 expenditures. And then building aid, you see about a $400,000 drop. So this has been, the last couple years, we had a project kind of falling off from back in the 08 timeframe. You get aided over about 15 years. So that project is falling off. And then that is where we still have some debt service payments that we're making on that. So, and that'll lead us to our next bond project that we'd be looking to ask the community to vote on in May of 2025. So then when those payments for debt service come off, then this new payment would go on, so it'd be no new impact to the taxpayers.
Now, on the transportation, is that pretty current estimate? Is there no more revision?
No, that should be pretty much final. We'll get the final, state budget.
Including the consideration of whatever inflation or other adjustment we need to consider.
Right, because again, for next year, it's based off of our, 23-24 is going to be based off of our 22-23 expenditures.
Okay, good.
What is it meant by excess cost, Chris?
So excess cost aid, that has to do with special education students. There's public and private excess cost aid. So depending on where a student is going out of district, there's a different percentage of aid that you might receive on that student if it crosses over a certain threshold. This slide is talking about the contingency budget. So again, if the budget is not approved by the voters, the district has 3 different options. They can resubmit the same budget for another vote. They can revise the budget and then submit that revised budget for a vote, or they can go straight to a contingent budget, which then would be a tax levy increase of $0 from the previous year. So for this current budget that we're looking at, if the contingent budget was in place, we'd have to reduce about $2.3 million from the budget, because we have to reduce the tax levy to the current tax levy that is for this year.
Is there any thought on what that would impact? Like where
So-
that money would come from?
Yeah, so that's a part we every year have to develop a plan for that. There are specific pieces that actually we can't spend on. The state would identify some of the capital pieces and stuff.
Yep, some of the equipment has to come out unless it's health and safety related. And then, again, we're talking $2.3 million. There's only so much equipment or supplies that we can look to actually cut. When we talk about that kind of money, we're looking at people, salaries and benefits for people, which then would then impact class sizes and programs moving forward. So,
And it would be a lot of people to make that gap.
Sure.
Okay. Hopefully we don't need that.
Then again, as we mentioned, so the voters will be asked via separate proposition to authorize the use of $7 million from the Capital Reserve Fund. Again, this fund was established last May by the voters, up to $10 million over a 10-year period. We currently have $7 million in that fund, so that is why we are now asking the voters to allow us to access those funds. So you have to have the voters approve the creation of the Capital Reserve Fund, and then you have to have the community approve the use of those funds, which were already established for a specific purpose.
And so since we already have that in our budget and it was already established for this particular use, if for some reason the community then said we can't spend it on that, can we use the money for something else, or does it have to sit there? How does that work?
Yeah, there's not much we can do with the fund once it's established. If we want to take money out of there, the voters would have to approve that as well. So whether it's for this purpose, but Yeah, so essentially, it was established for this work in mind. This is what it should be spent on.
Okay.
And then one of the things just to make sure is these dollars are already existing. These are not reoccurring dollars, it's your savings account. What this allows us to do also is to avoid bonding for projects like this. So, for example, between this and our last kind of partial security, or the safety and security bond, about $10 million, talk about a multi-million-dollar savings in just interest alone on that project. So this is part of our overall master fiscal plan, is to reserve as much as you can when opportunities like this, because as opposed to bonding $7 million out for 15 years at a 3.5% interest rate, we're saving it and we're going to deploy that and take care of that, and it's done. We're not going out and bonding for that project. A good portion of the last safety and security project, we did the same way. And so it's part of it. It's not going to be the full entire solution. That woven in with the bond structure that we'll be looking at, as Chris mentioned, in 2 years, we'll be bringing off historical bonds and be looking to bring on new ones to update roofs and our paving and our concrete, some classroom upgrades, but it's cost neutral. And then continuing to use these bonds. For example, the last time the board did something like this also was the replacement of the synthetic field at the main field at the high school. So that was, again, not bonded out. That was all paid from savings account. So again, it did not incur those rates. We have to obviously take care of the facilities that have been afforded to us. We also have to help out with some of our roof projects in the same ways too. It's not enough to get the 100% done, but it's a good portion of the overall capital maintenance plan that we have.
Yeah, maybe I can also augment on this. These kind of spending, it's for a long period of time, so it's not fair to compare 1 year's budgets. Okay, your incremental percentage in sports spending is so high versus other things, because this spending is amortized or averaged over maybe even 10 years. So that is a fair assessment rather than compare another line items as this year your sports spending is gone so much. I just want to clarify.
Sure.
And
if
later
it's
on, I would like to, in my comment time, to talk about the budgeting process. I think this is a complicated process. We have to inform all the public. That's I call public information that people are interested in. But also there is a very active community, which is our school active community, means parents, teachers, and everybody, students, so on. The active group. We tend to, in my opinion, spend more time preparing budgets so on for the general public. And that's why we focus on tax rate, we focus on state stuff and funding, so on, and tracking over a year for the general public information. But may not be enough, detailed specifics for the active community, which I think is very important, because after all, the school is for students, for kids, and for the parents. They are directly concerned this minute, this hour, this year, right? So I think for the next session, I would suggest you got this tax levy, and the public part portion is over. We do show a little more of that correlation I was referring to on the specifics that it's interested to the active community, the programs per school, spendings, like we ask those questions, because we want to know, however small portion of the budget is spent on the education, we want to see that it's spent on the, so they call it, on the knife edge, really is used properly. And one example is, I always advocate that, but people know it's difficult. We have line items. Let's say you have 500 line items on the budget. We should have a drawing that on this 500 code, do we have a plus on that or minus on that, plus on that, and draw a histogram to show over our line items what happened next year. Do we have more pluses? Always, we always do, unfortunately. But at least we know what are the pluses, what are the minuses, whether that really impact to our school in terms of students' needs, in terms of parents' expectation, in terms of our whole society expectation, okay? I may be asking a little too much, but that's that direction. We've been focusing on the public generated information, I think, a little, for the many years, tax levy, tax rate. Those two numbers seem to be the big deal over budget process, over 80% of our discussion at time and so on. But we really should also think about, people do ask about, all right, did you spend enough for, Primrose? Because Primrose enrollment is increasing, and the kids start early, should be taken care of, in such a way and so on. In that kind of correlation, we will, at least from BOE point of view, we feel better we're doing the right job, okay? And the community will feel, their school is doing the right job, the money is, spent well.
Sophia, I'm just going to go in one more time, just drive us.
I used up my comment time.
I'm going to catch you on that one later, that's for sure, he's done. Just want to drive everybody's attention back to the proposed budget that will be coming forth. You have a 4-year glance of what took place between actual budgeted and proposed. For example, I'm looking at the one that's up on the website right now. What is the area for teaching regular program? How many FTE are there in there now? What it look like, 1920 cost, 2021 cost, 21-22 cost in the proposal. It's laid in there. If there's anything specific the board wants, we can certainly add it in there.
We just have to
It is
highlight it.
pretty exhaustive in there, and anything we'll pull and highlight, we'll highlight in our presentation, because it is an 89-page document that's up on the site and stuff, so but any highlights we can absolutely bring up and do that work for sure. And I think, Eva, like you said, unfortunately, there are some things we just know that are going to continue to rise with health insurance costs, which, again, in and of itself is about a 30% increase. You add the salaries in now, it's about 2/3 just between those two. So we can get, and then utilities. So the last piece, Chris, if you don't mind, I just wanted to hit. No, thank you, Chris. Very good. So we just have specifically some of the things that are going on in those facilities, and I want to certainly have our athletic program. I also don't want to miss the physical education program. So for us in particular, our physical education teachers are very excited about our tennis courts, because now having tennis courts on school property, that lifelong sport can become a guaranteed experience for children at the high school, where it isn't now. It is truly a sport because we use Reese Park. So now by having it on campus at the school, that is an added value that we'd be adding to all kids will learn how to play tennis and maybe some pickleball, Ife. I just want to say it out loud. So not permanent, but we'll put up some temporary thing. So with that's it. Maybe the PE teams are ready, talking about designing their units and getting that ready. And we hope that even our middle school children who may be invested and interested in like a modified experience with that can use our course, because now we got transportation going over and things. So, and in the other areas where beyond the tennis, we're looking at kind of softball now. That actually is very multi-purpose because the location of there. It is a softball field for our spring sports. There was softball, yet it becomes year-round usage as long as kids can go outside. We've designed to have gates in the outfield. The kids can go out. They can do PE out there. They can do just regular recess and things. So it will be used heavily, frankly, by the Primrose team out there as well. Certainly, there's many days, especially now, that's just really soggy and the kids come in all a mess. They can go out there instead of playing on the blacktop. They can go out on the turf and kind of get into their activities and stuff like that.
And the town uses that field for recreational sports also, right?
Absolutely.
The girls softball?
Yes. Oh, very heavily. Yes.
Well,
All
the youth sports are using it, right? So I must say the assets in the fields and the investment in that, they're used around the clock, right? So we definitely utilize our resources
Do we charge the town
efficiently
for using the fields?
So no, it's a great partnership we have with the town's community fund. If somebody from outside comes in and decides they want to like host a tournament or something, yes, we do charge those folks who don't aren't friends of the family, I guess we'll say, our family members. So it's a matter of the town.
all the town stuff is all non-for-profit,
Yep.
right? It's all the same kids that are in the same
But it would
schools
be
as
the
us, the youth
same
programs.
funding, right, Nick? I mean, if we were, we wouldn't
Same-
charge the town because it would be our property taxes
Exactly,
anyway.
right? It's our
And the
property
town would
taxes
have to
going
charge,
for it.
higher tax, yeah. So it's got to get paid for by somewhere. And
But
it's
a lot of school districts don't allow it, right? And they're underutilized assets, right? So that's why, when the town's going for it, we're investing our tax dollars into this, right? It is every child, from K or youth, all the way up to 18 and beyond, right, has access to these fields and is able to use it for physical activity. So it's
I
good investment.
remember I commented before supporting sports program is when you have a good facility, you also draw people in.
Sure.
Other town, because we have tournaments, we have competitions, other school districts could come to Somers to play and so on, and afterwards you're gonna have a burger, or a burger barn or whatever place to have a bite. The town does benefit, so for the general public, should understand, it's not a luxury for a few, really is averaged over a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I, support that, even though it is a lot of money, okay? But I think also brings a lot of benefits.
It's a community amenity in addition to a school district amenity.
And then just with the baseball, that is going to be turned into a full synthetic experience. Again, that allows us to be able to use that in the fall for many of our CISO colleagues when they're using that as practice field and things like that. So they're not going to rip anything up. There's no damage. It's not like, hey, stay out of the outfield. It's just fine. So be able to use that. And then our track and field, be able to update some of our shot put areas and things like that. And so as we look at, we also have some small projects going inside just at Primrose and at the high school, doing some ceiling tile replacement on some original ceiling tile. That allows us to hopefully maximize as much as we can, getting a little bit of state aid back from this. You don't get full on type of this project, but by putting enough into the interior schools, we'll get a little bit of aid back. So that just helps us on the numbers that Chris is running through and those aid kind of dollars that walk us through. In that regard. So again, just a overall full picture that this specifically was intended for updating our facilities in this area here with our athletic facilities. Again, we will have a very different experience for hopefully our community, all the way from our little kids. And we have our adult leagues. We have adult leagues. They're our family, our community members that come in and play sports at night and stuff like that for us. And so that's a piece we hope to add on to. There's some ad alternates here. Don't know if we'll be able to do that, but one of those in particular is like on our second turf or lower turf is to look at lights on there. That will again allow us, frankly, we're very interested in it too. So sometimes our kids out a little bit late because we only have one field. Like we get 2 lights going, they're there. Even our kids at the high school can run dual competitive sports in the fall and be able to have those run at times. So their day gets done early, they don't get home as late, and we can kind of get them off to their studies and things like that. So looking at the possibility of just getting some lights on that second piece for the entire community. So
Help me remember, Ray, I know that there were the 2 areas in the lower field where you were
Yep.
going to be replacing those fields, one of them with the 6 tennis courts, and then the shot put throwing areas. So those are not being changed, those are actually being enhanced.
Right. We're having the old pads pulled up and new pads installed, new cages installed and things like that.
Just
So
for anyone whose kids maybe are
Right,
participating in those,
absolutely. In our
activities, that they're not losing that space, they're actually.
Our track coach let us know that we're kind of an oddity. We have 2 areas where kids can throw down lower, and then we'll have an upgraded space. Drainage will be handled in the outside of the baseball field, so they can update that throwing space, so they can run multiple throwers at the same time. And again, like Ife's point, that will allow us to attract many other school districts outside. I even thought about what Sarah shared before. We had just short of 500 kids present last weekend at our science fair. And I agree with you. When I kind of scooted out, there's a lot of people hitting the restaurants around here, so that was, I think, good for the community and for the town, and again, by the investment in those gyms and be able to add those additions and be able to use those for the community and stuff, and so it was very good. So, thanks.
Right, I'm wondering, like, with all this upgrades on fields, I'm sure there's an ecological assessment when it comes to like
Yes.
some of this. Like, I assume that's part of it, but I just wanted to make sure.
You'll see this a little bit of the secret resolution update coming a little bit. So, yeah, thank you. And then the last piece, Chris.
Yep, just upcoming Board of Ed meeting dates and budget topics. April 18th, budget summary, and then that is where budget will be put up for adoption by the Board of Ed. May 2nd is the public budget hearing, and then all leading again to May 16th for the budget vote and trustee election.
Thanks, Chris.
So I believe that we are at the committee and liaison report. I don't know if any of our liaisons have anything to report. I just wanted to quickly because Nancy reminded me before, and I don't want to forget. On April 25th, we need to have a quick morning meeting. I'd like to make sure that we have a quorum at 8 in the morning. I know that we have a couple folks that'll be able to be there. Curious if anybody else would be able to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning on the 25th of April for the BOCES vote. I think you said that Chad and Heidi and Amanda also said that they would be there.
Heidi and Amanda.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Chad, I
replied.
volunteered you. I'll be there, so we just need one more person for quorum. If someone can be there at 8, it'll be a quick vote. You want to come next? Terrific.
So just as a point on this on board, we call this is the annual budget for BOCES that
Oh, the
every
BOCES,
18 component BOCES district has to go ahead and vote on. So that is a singular item. Sometimes it falls on our Tuesdays and sometimes it doesn't. This time it didn't. So that's every 18 of the component school districts will be doing the same thing with their Board of Education approving the BOCES budget, and that's what they have to do to get their budget approved by the boards that make it up.
But it's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's not a regular board meeting in the
Correct.
evening.
Yep. It's just
It was in the
one
dashboard.
April 25th.
Yes, no, I know.
It's a
I heard
Tuesday,
about
yeah.
that.
It's a Tuesday.
Give me some of my dates.
Thank you for putting it in the dashboard. We've got it covered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustees. I don't know if we have any liaison reports.
I have just a little bit. I think Amanda had gone to one of the Westput, I think, things so far, but I had just done,
I
just
gave
wanted
a very detailed email, so if anyone wanted to read it, sorry about that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know, remind everybody, in your emails, you should have gotten a resolutions survey from New York State School Board Association. So that's our opportunity, like last year when we were looking at the different resolutions for things that New York State School Board Association was going to advocate for, or what they were supporting or not supporting. So at this time of year, they put out to all school board members some questions, a little survey, trying to get a sense of where all the school board trustees in the state stand on certain issues and if it's something that they feel is important. So that deadline, the last day for that is tomorrow. So if you look through your emails, if you can't find it, let me know and I'll try to find it and
Why
send
don't
it
you
to you.
resend, because I think I deleted it.
Yeah, I'll see if I still have it because I did it already, so I may not have
I think
kept
another
it.
one just came today to remind us.
Yeah, so
There's
you
a
can look for
fresh
that
one. Yeah.
if you wanted to be able to weigh in at the early stage on the resolutions. And then also just a reminder, Westchester Putnam School Board Association is holding a virtual session for prospective school board trustees. So anybody that's interested in running for school board that wants more information about the service, that's on April 13th, and it's
Can we
online.
put that on the website someplace so that folks in the community have access to it?
It is on the website.
It is. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, and they also have a bunch of resources that are linked there, some manuals and things that just give information about school boards in general and what it means to be a trustee and that sort of thing. So Westchester Putnam School Board Association is the WPBSA. Westchester, the initials for Westchester Putnam School Board.
WPSBA.
WPSBA.org, and then New York State School Board Association, which is NYSSBA.org. Both of them have areas that you can look for prospective school boards. So if anybody was interested in that, just want to make sure you knew those resources were there. That's it.
Anything else?
No.
Amanda, I don't know if there was anything high level that you want to share just for public consumption so that people are aware of what's happening.
It was just an interesting seminar. There's part 2 is coming up Thursday. Sorry, it's this week. But yeah, I thought it was I don't know, like I can't even remember all I wrote to you guys at this point, but it was an interesting. I thought it was I enjoy these little seminars. I think they're very informative. So if anyone has any questions about anything or any of the
Can you
documents.
remind us the name of the webinar and how it was particularly relevant
So
to
this
you?
one, well, what I liked about it was that it was the ed law one, so it was the education law one, and they talked about like First Amendment. They also talked about negotiating contracts in your school district and executive content and stuff like that. So it's just good to keep your skills up. And next week, I forget what this Thursday's on. I think it's going to be about relationships with like school PTAs and such. So.
Great to have a resident legal expert.
It's good to have her and write a summary, because I don't think I can ever read that 90 pages.
It was a slide deck, so it was a quick read. But yeah, it was.
On fire.
So we rely on you to be our.
I have found all the things they offer are usually really
great.
good information.
And they also, actually did the, now that I'm thinking of it, they also updated us on the House and Senate budget items too. So if everyone wants to give that a quick read to see what they're doing in Albany.
All right. So it looks like we are on to the approval of minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, having received copies of minutes of these meetings, hereby approves the same motion.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okay, so we move to board action. First up is the personnel consent agenda. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, hereby approves the attached personnel agenda. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. All right, CSE, CPSE, be it resolved, the Board of Education, having received copies of recommendations of the meetings as listed, hereby approves the same motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Business consent agenda, be it resolved, the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, hereby approves the attached business agenda. Motion.
So moved.
Second?
Chris?
Just a couple of things. We're awarding the bid for a couple of bids that we put out, one for videotaping services, school claims auditor, and then HVAC services. We put out a few of our own bids, and then often we'll piggyback off of other bids as well, whether that's state contract or B.O.E.s, or there's national cooperatives that we can piggyback off of. There's also a resolution for us to join the Southern Westchester B.O.E.s cooperative bid. So they put out various bids on district's behalf. At the next board meeting, there'll be another resolution for us to join the Putnam Northern Westchester B.O.E.s bid. So just a couple of those.
Questions?
I have a question. Maybe Paul knows the answer. A lot of video stuff now get put on YouTube because YouTube is very aggressive, offering services on, including live shows. I just wonder sometimes the school board meetings could be actually put on YouTube live.
Smile
We're
away.
actually on YouTube Live right now, okay?
There you go. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So what is the link?
It's on the site, it's emailed out, it's on our YouTube piece and everything, so. yeah.
All right, please send that link to us.
It's on
the homepage.
It's on the homepage.
I certainly
We'll send it
cannot
to you.
watch myself.
There's millions of people watching right now. Yifei.
Yeah.
You and 5
Millions.
other people.
But I
You could stream it on your phone while we're
know,
here.
I'll let other people know. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Mary Rose, the secret negative declaration, proposed athletic fields. Sorry, just remembered that you had asked about that. I'm not putting you on the spot. Sorry. Whereas the Board of Education is considered undertaking a project, I'm skipping all of this language because you've all read it. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education hereby directs that the staff and or consultants file, circulate, and publish the negative declaration in accordance with as presented. Motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion about this piece?
Nope, so this was, again, in regards to the athletic facility
Right.
upgrades, because of the acreage that was going to be undertaken with the softball field, the baseball field, and then the tennis courts. So it wasn't as simple as the last seeker resolution that we had. So there had to be some additional forms and some additional agencies that need to be notified. So we went through that process, and then, again, it was determined that there's no significant impact to the environment.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Authorization of the proposition to expend from capital reserve funds. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Somers Central School District hereby authorizes the following proposition as presented here. Be it further resolved, the Board of Education of Somers Central School District hereby directs the district clerk to include the above stated proposition, including its abbreviated form, in the notice of May 16th annual meeting of the school district. Sorry, May 16, 2023. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, item number F, under board action, is attendance at a conference. Be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby approves a request from the Board of Education trustee Amanda Candell to attend the Westchester Putnam School Board Association Education Law 2023, held March 16th and 23rd, at a cost of $45. Motion.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Seems like it was a worthwhile endeavor.
It was a webinar even, I didn't have to go anywhere.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Team Tuskers mentoring volunteers. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Somer Central School District does hereby appoint the following additional volunteers assigned as mentors for the district's mentoring program. A big thank you to Nancy Albertson, Ella Quinn Lepla, and Jeffrey Heller. Thank you to those of you if you're here. Motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Now we have an amendment to the current 22-23 calendar. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education of the Somer Central School District hereby accepts the previously adopted 22-23 calendar. Be revised to reflect the change of May 30th now being a half day for students and a half day of professional learning for staff as presented. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
So just a little detail on that, to allow us to maintain our 180 student days kind of on that calendar. We know we had the snow day last week.
Yeah.
We were able to shift that to a professional learning / conference day to complete the conferences at the elementary level. And then what we're doing is on the May 30th day, which was a full conference day, that'll be half. And so we'll get that message out to the families in plenty of time, let them know that change again allows us to stay with 180 days is kind of our at least baseline start. We know we have a few snow days in there, and so this allows us to go ahead and keep those days in alignment with what's expected. And then we'll go ahead and just shift one for the other one to happen sooner than later.
Okay, and because staff came in, that's the reason why you kind of have to do it this way.
Yep, we got the staff came in that day. A little bit delayed start, but they completed
Yeah,
their
'cause it wasn't
conferences and did
really
all
a
that
full-
work
it
and
was-
coordinated.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
And we
instead of
still
a full
have one
We
bad
would-
weather day to give.
Or other crazy things that we know that may happen in the spring. Yeah.
Don't
so-
jinx us, Chad.
Now, one interesting thing about snow days, nowadays was the prediction actually pretty accurate. I mean, with science is in advancing. Should we take advantage of the fact that we know the snow days coming way ahead? So can we really define the day in a way that best for our education and also saving our cost instead of paying some
So
one and a half time?
I would just say it's not as good as you're making it sound out to be. It's not as good as you're making it sound out to be. I kind of did a little delay earlier this year. I was like, really? I did it for that? And it was like everybody's guaranteeing it.
Right.
So a lot of it's a kind of a gut check and things like that. Even that storm on that day, we all know it didn't come till late. And frankly, from north to south of our it was 8 inches. In some areas got
Not
just
that
a
good
dusting.
enough, huh?
So it's just not as tight as it's going to be. So.
I work from home, so send them in as much.
That's right.
I'll take the
To
risk of
your
the snow truck or any kind of accidents. I think
So
those
that's
buses are
funny.
pretty
Your
safe.
kids tell me the same thing when I see them in the hall. So I just want to let you know.
But do a survey on students.
No.
100% will take a snow days.
They're sleeping with
All in
spoons.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Excellent. Amendment to the calendar for the next calendar year, resolved that upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, Board of Education of Somer Central School District hereby accepts the previously adopted, be revised to reflect 2/7/24 as an additional half-day of professional learning. Motion?
So moved.
And so for me, that one was just there's an error on my part that I did not have that February half day in there as it had always been. I just missed it in my oversight of that. So that was my error.
And there I was saying that we were having fewer professional learning days. And the last, yeah.
No, fewer from 4 or 5 years ago. Yes.
Correct,
This
correct.
is just in line with what we've done over the last 4 years. Yep.
Thank you. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okay, so we're in the policy section. For those of you following along, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education does hereby accept the following policies for a second reading and an adoption. We have 4 policies here: the student health service policy, attendance at meetings and conferences policy, a policy on authorized use of school-owned materials, and use of cell phones. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Policy folks, I don't know if anybody wanted to make any sort of commentary here.
No, I think we've
nothing
looked at all,
additional, I don't-
yeah, and these were all on the last.
Yep,
we
just
looked
making
at
sure.
before, Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, public comment. So again, members of the public who are here to give a comment, not a question, but a comment, please come to the podium, state your name, and share your comment with the board. We will make sure that it gets to the appropriate person and get you your feedback.
Hi, Gary Portnoy. Just write my name down. I probably should have asked this in the prior comment section, but
Speak a little louder.
sorry. I probably should have asked this in the prior section because it was actually related to the budget, but this didn't occur to me until I was watching the presentation. And maybe because, on the way here on the car, everybody's talking about like inflation on the radio, right? It's not immediately clear in the presentation, like what role inflation plays in the budget. I think you kind of mentioned it here and there in the conversation. But to me, it wasn't clear. And as I was sitting here, I looked up like the cumulative rate of inflation between 2010 and 2023. So in the last 13 years, it's like 38% or something like that, which means like the $80 million budget then would be $110 million budget now. And I was just wondering, like, if there's any way for you guys to demonstrate that, because I think maybe based on the questions or kind of even like the internal impression I have is, the budget's growing because school is adding new programs, adding new fields, hiring teachers. But how much of that is just the cost of goods and services going up? So anything you can do, and I know you can't really put it into the 90 whatever page budget, but anything you can do in the presentation to demonstrate that and how that correlates would be really interesting for me to see. All right, thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Time again.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I cannot
appreciate
hear
it.
him.
I'd like to use that as well. Taking it home.
Tell you later.
Okay, lots of members of the public, but no other comments. So I think we are at the board member comments. Trustees.
Can I time us too?
Yes, you should time all of us.
I think they already gave up his time, too.
You,
I'd just like to remind everyone.
If you don't want to use your time, I'll take it.
Doesn't work that way, Eva.
Nope, that's a policy. You can't do that. I'll go first. I got to go, I know a couple of us also got to go to the West F Science Research Fair to go see the students' projects that they have there. It was, last year I got to see the award ceremony, and that's pretty cool to go see all like the excitement of these kids and the awards that they're winning, and hear about all the hard work that they put in. But now I actually got to go see the projects this year because the COVID restrictions were gone and all that. But wow, some of these projects and kids, all of these projects and kids were super impressive. I walked around, I tell people, not to the millions of people watching, but some of them I was intimidated to even ask questions to. They're talking about molecular science and all this stuff here. One kid I got to talk to, was talking about a research that they did on, I think it was dark matter, and studying got access to the data of some mega telescope, and how she analyzed the data. She had to use Python programming and a couple other tools. And I'm like, were you into programming before? She's like, no, I had to teach myself as part of the class, and start learning program. It was absolutely amazing. Between what they learned for the research and how they analyzed the data, how they presented it, the tools that they did, to learn to be able to analyze the data and use it. I can't speak highly enough about kind of the skills that these kids come out with that program. So if anybody's listening to this, a piece of it, and they have a kid of sophomore age that's thinking about it, I would highly consider trying to get your kid into that. Whether they win an award or not, I think they win by coming out with some amazing skill sets that are going to be extremely useful in life. Some experiences. I think some of these kids were going down to some medical centers, whether it's NYU or again this one here working with some big NASA telescope. The experiences are I think memorable, and the mentors that they work with. When I talk about the athletic field, someone did a study about mental health on students that are athletes or part of athletic programs versus ones that were not, and there was a whole page that they big presentation that they did, an outcome on it. But anyway, I was very impressed with that. Looking forward to Thursday and going to see the award ceremony on that.
I'll just piggyback off of what Nick said. I also had the opportunity to go, and I took two of my kids, and it was so impressive to see all the work that these guys put into to everything. Like just talking to some of the students and like what they were doing, I was absolutely intimidated by a lot of the work they were doing. I also just want to give a shout out to the wonderful production at SMS and the team at SMS for the musical that they were able to pull off for middle school was amazing. I hope everyone got a chance to see it. And I just want to thank all of those teachers for putting in all the work with those kids, and the kids put in also a lot of work too. And they did fantastic. And I think, oh, and I look forward to our visit tomorrow morning, bright and early, to see the middle years program. That was the last piece, so.
I have to piggyback a little bit on this. I didn't go to this science fair. I regret it, but I couldn't help it. I have my son-in-law 50th birthday surprise party that's planned for 2 times because snow and other things. I cannot, sort of not go to that one. So I've been involved in science program for a long time, since beginning. And I've been, of course, helping sort of solving these mentor issues. Mentor is one problem that the science program faces. So if anybody interested, qualified, certainly should. I really urge you to help out in this mentor program. And I've been serving also as judge in the science research program for many years. And I think that's also very interesting. That's actually better than when you go through all this, huge crowd. You get to really listen to the presenter, and you have a form. You have to really pay attention to take notes and sort of grade them. That's a very good exercise for your own mental sort of keep up with the world type of thing. So that's my comment. I think that's a great thing. Hopefully next time I won't miss that.
And it's big. It
It's
took
huge.
2 buildings, right?
Right.
Primrose in the high school.
Also draws a lot of people to Somers. I think now Somers is on the map. Okay, it used to be everybody say science. Oh, Ossining. Nobody knows Somers, but now I think we are on the map, right?
On the map.
No, we're on the map.
Well, it's the largest science fair in the country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here, here.
I'm just going to say good luck to the high school musical
Oh, yes.
participants. This is a pretty busy week if history repeats itself, which I think it always does whenever they put these on.
Yeah.
So excited ahead of time, and I know there's a lot of work that goes into these, and a lot of excitement, man. So.
Yeah, kind of same. So, thank you for all the work that's going into the budget presentations and answering our questions. I know we've had a lot of last-minute questions too, and you've been real quick to respond and get us the information we need, and we'll continue working through it. So, that's great. And I appreciated that. I think we all try to go to as many things as we can in the school district and see what's going on and get a sense of it. And there's always a lot, so we have to pick and choose sometimes. So I appreciated Mr. Malia inviting us, kind of giving us that nudge to come by and check out the science fair, because that was. I hadn't been to that one before, and that was very impressive. And to see it hosted in Somers, that was great. And I'm hoping that I can get to the high school performance this weekend, so their musical. I missed the middle school one because I had too many things that weekend. But always good to be included and be able to see everything in action.
So I think this is appropriate timing since we're in the land of budget planning and we're letting folks know what's going to be cooking for the coming up year. And I've been thinking about what to say in public, so I actually wrote it down because I've been asked repeatedly about my perception of our board. And so I wanted to say it publicly in front of our board, and specifically the public perception of my role on this board. And so what I've noticed recently in our town and what I feel is that our community believes that our board holds some sort of outsized power, if you will. And what I've realized over the past several years is that the opposite is true. It has been clear to me that the public has a misperception of power, specifically the power of the school board. The community sees me up here and thinks that I'm some position of power, but I want to let you all know that in many ways, being a board member has actually disempowered me. as a parent and as a member of your community. You, community members, think that we have power here, and we don't. And so when I take up a community member's concern, it's because that their needs are not being met currently. Advocating for community members puts me at opposition with either the district or the people in the community who are happy with status quo. And this, my friends, is a difficult position to be in, especially today in our polarized society. So as a board member, I have questions and I have concerns, and most of them are brought up in executive session, which many of you are not privy to. The public does not see them, they do not hear them. There is so much of this job that is not public, that you do not see, you do not hear. I am here to tell you that you do not see the entirety of our work. The public does not even have close to a full awareness of our positions, my position, about the things that I've advocated for or against in private, and whether I have the same questions and concerns as you, because I am not allowed to say, hey, that's a great question. That's something we've just discussed in executive session. And let me tell you some other questions that we brought up alongside that question, because I cannot say those things. This has been my experience. Most importantly, because of my position on the board as an advocate for the children of everyone in this district, I've backed away from advocating for my own children. And that's not okay. And I've done that to ensure that our educators don't feel uncomfortable when talking with me because of my role as a board member or any perceptions that anybody else might feel. And so after much deliberation over the past year, and it's been a lot of deliberation, I've decided not to seek re-election for our school board. I have already lost so much valuable time with my children and my family. And I have got to return to the important role of advocating for my own children the way I've advocated for yours. I'm not running for re-election in May because I'm limited in this role, and I'm done limiting myself. I know that there are some folks that are going to be ecstatic by this news and some folks that are going to be sad, and all I can say is that this is a well thought out position and something that has been a long time coming for me. I'm a parent with 2 children in this district. I am trying to get food on the table just like you are. Once my term expires, I will be returning to solely being a parent in this community, advocating for change in a way that is bigger than what I've done on this board. What I've realized is that being a parent and a community member wields far more power than being a member of a school board when it comes to enacting change. So if you're considering a run for this seat in May, I want you to be clear about the role and the latitude that it has and does not have. I ran for this position 6 years ago because I believe in public service and public education. Today, I'm in a different place in my life. And while I still believe these things, I have lots of hard-won experience about our role in this position and our capacity to serve all stakeholders. So I want to make this clear now, in case any others are considering running for a spot on this board, as I've advocated so loudly for historically. I'm happy to share my experience with anyone who's considering running, so please reach out. My door is always open. I didn't want there to be any surprises, and I wanted you all to understand exactly where I was coming from. I do have more to say. I will leave that for my final thoughts at the end of this term. So thank you, colleagues. It has been lovely to serve with you. Dr. Blanche.
Thanks. I'll go ahead and just close this out. Board, you hit a couple of things there. Just you had mentioned on Thursday with the WESF, that is, it's kind of like, the kids don't know how they did in the science competition you all spoke about last weekend. They got some initial feedback and things, but in relationship to everything else. So the kids all come to that evening unaware of if they were going to go ahead in designation of how they placed in that event. So it is truly an unveiling of how the kids are going to do. So the excitement level there is higher than I've ever seen before, because the kids, they don't know. And so it's, the envelope's open and who's the winner. And so yes, I'm so glad folks came to come Sunday and they're this weekend. Saturday, the Thursday piece is one of those pieces. You're like screaming with the kids and everything. I don't know, I'm screaming out what they're winning, but it was great. So hopefully you come to that one. And then, again, we have the musical at the high school this weekend. This is our first time, basically, since pre-COVID, when we always host on Sundays. Our student council and our student senate host our senior citizens, and therefore brunch that the senior citizens will come before they see the matinee on Sunday. So we're really excited about getting that. We usually get 70, 80 or more folks coming in. So the kids will serve them brunch. We'll have some little bit of a kind of a song will be shown from the show before ahead of time, and so it gives us a chance to see that and things. So the other piece I hadn't thought about this, but you got me thinking about, you went to your son's 50th birthday and the whole thing. So a few years ago I turned 50 and my wife wasn't even in the state. I'm like, what do you got to tell me how to figure that out? And I was like, oh my goodness. So again, as we heard before,
I'll be on your wife's side.
so is everybody else, Ife. It's okay. It makes sense. So as one of the things as we talk about with the budget tonight, so we've had many queries from our board of questions. Perfect. Helps us get a better picture of what we can help present to the community. Same with our community members. Hey, can you help me with this? That? Try to get that information directly back as much as we can. I mean, with the PTA. So when we have a PTA conversation, we'll go over multiple times there. So those, and that's a K through 12 PTA. So they're all represented there and stuff. So we have a Citizens Finance Committee that we have come together and talk about the budget. So it's there to try to be as clear and understanding as much as we can. There's always things we can do better, and we'll just keep trying to come back to either things we've done before that now make better sense now, or a new look of things. So I appreciate the diligence on the board and community saying, hey, help us have a full understanding so we can fully support and understand where we're going with it. So thank you, board, and have a good evening.
Well said. Excellent. So be it resolved that this regular Board of Ed be adjourned. Motion.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thanks, y'all.